Good evening. This is FBGN, Foundational Black Global News. You are watching Tokennomiks, the Trojan Feather, Episode 5B, The Two Architectures, The Ground Beneath Oath. Before this episode builds its argument, the proceeding requires a precise establishment of who is in the room, not as a formality, as an evidentiary credential.
In the Garden of Eternity, Queen Empress U governs over the primordial waters of Nu, where what precedes as the beginning still holds its original form and forever alignment with the celestial harmony for him, his imperial majesty. There is a certain figure named Solen Baptiste, otherwise known as Blade 17, of the Soothsayers, elite personal guard of 32, has been notified, given the mission in a different environment from the search weave, and in a rare operational moment, an outside collaborator to work alongside. What led to that moment, and what it sets in motion, is what this preamble places on the record.
This search weave, Soothtech, will allow you access to the search weave in ways you would find certainly advantageous and insightful. The skeptic and I, after exchanging gifts, and after establishing the aligned interest both dimensions share in the Trojan Feather proceeding, have agreed to collaborate. When the transfer is complete, you will be able to fully access the shadow you would not even know was standing next to you. Blade 17, Solen Baptiste.
The Zawadi, yes the gift, that new searchweave Soothtech that the Soothsayer transferred, is now fully integrated and operational, my liege the Queen Skeptic. I am currently viewing the mission parameters and contingencies as I speak to you. What the integration has red flagged and immediately surfaced is a cultivation percentage within the CA of a highly sought-after professional located currently in the 3D realm of objectivity. This individual is dangerously close to activating an avoidable descent into the bottomless pit. The grief pipeline in the City of Judgment is reading that frequency at a resolution that requires immediate field coverage. The destination? The city of Petersburg, Virginia. The Tidewater area. Norfolk, Virginia.
Governor General, reporting as requested, ready for an update on the upcoming mission.
We give thanks, Blade 9. You are here for an immediate mission update. Authorization code, Soothsayer. This parameter update you are about to receive sits comfortably outside your current chain of command. This is a personal directive within our standard unit architecture. A directive coming directly from the Sooth Oracle.
Understood, Governor. What is the directive?
There is a celestial disturbance in the City of Judgment. Nat's Feather is the focus. The Trojan Feather proceeding is active at the highest cosmological authority. This has set something in motion that requires coverage in the 3D realm of objectivity. 2 operatives are being deployed there shortly. Your unit provides hidden security for that deployment.
Hidden security, not a visible presence.
Correct. The operatives move. Your unit holds the perimeter in the unseen register. You do not announce. You do not engage unless the situation requires it.
Who are the 2 operatives, Governor General?
The first is a former citizen of the Search Weave, elevated, now operating within the court of the Queen of Skepticism in the bottomless pit. You know her work, Elara.
A bottomless pit, operative in the 3D realm. That is an unusual deployment, Governor General.
It is. The Trojan Feather proceeding changes the geometry of what is required. The Queen Skeptic and I have aligned on what the receipts require. This mission is the result of that alignment. This mission is the result of that growing alignment. She needs to move without interference.
And the second operative?
A blade.
A Blady Governor-General, to my understanding, all 32 blades like myself and my unit are all on active unseen missions here within the Searchweave's New Order installation. The protocols were established during Tokennomiks Resonance Wars and the Journey to the Library of Thoth novel series, as well as all other units are committed to that architecture.
Correct. And one is being redirected. Blade 17 is prepped and awaiting the green light to proceed into the 3D realm. Your unit provides the hidden security that allows that deployment to function. If Blade 17 requires assistance in the field, your unit responds. If there is a need, if Blade 17 requires assistance in the field, then with swift reflex and without hesitation, your unit responds.
Blade 17 in the 3D realm. Elara crossing from the bottomless pit. Hidden perimeter in the unseen register. Governor-General. This is a joint operation between the Searchweave and the bottomless pit.
It is, which is why the coverage needs to be precise. The Queen Skeptic herself has authorized this movement. The proceeding has raised questions about what it means for her liege, the Red Cynic, and his new pit order. Elara carries that authorization and the hidden mysteries access that comes with it. She needs to move without interference.
Governor-General, as you command.
Dismissed.
The Barbados timeline, why it qualifies. Africans arrived in Barbados before Virginia. Barbados was settled by the English in 1627. African labor arrived almost immediately. By 1629 there are records of Africans on the island. By 1650 Barbados had more enslaved Africans than any other English colony in the hemisphere. The sugar revolution of the 1640s is the turning point. Before sugar, Barbados ran on tobacco and indentured white European labor. The shift to sugar in the 1640s required a massive, organized, permanent labor force. The island made a deliberate economic decision. Sugar requires year-round intensive labor that indentured servitude with fixed terms cannot sustain. The planters turned to enslaved African labor as the permanent solution.
The enslaved Africans brought from Barbados to the Carolina colony, beginning in 1670, represent the first large-scale, organized, intentionally structured transplantation of an African labor force into what would become the American South. The economic and agricultural architecture of South Carolina and Georgia was built by this workforce. Their cultural descendants are the Gula Geechee Nation, whose territorial acknowledgment by the U.S. government represents the most direct official recognition of this lineage's foundational role in building that region. The August 1619 Virginia arrival was not a slave ship in the legal sense. The Bacon's Rebellion factor in 1676. This is the event that accelerated Virginia's full commitment to race-based slavery, and it is essential context.
Before Barbados, the Spanish and Portuguese Caribbean preceded the English by over a century. This is where the foundational claim needs precision, because if you are arguing for the first organized assembly of African lineage in the Western Hemisphere, the English Caribbean is not the starting point. The timeline. 1501, Spanish Crown authorizes African labor in Hispaniola. 1510s, organized African labor in Cuba, Puerto Rico, Hispaniola at scale. 1530s, 1570s, Portuguese Brazil developing plantation sugar with African labor. 1619, Virginia. 1627, Barbados settled. 1640s, Barbados Sugar Revolution, African labor at scale. 1661, Barbados Slave Act. 1670, Carolina settlement from Barbados. The Spanish and Portuguese Caribbean had been running organized plantation slavery with African labor for 130 years before Barbados fully committed to the model. However, and this is the precise distinction for your argument, the Spanish and Portuguese Caribbean lineage feeds primarily into Latin American and Caribbean identity, not directly into the FBA lineage. The Barbados-Carolina pipeline is specifically the organizational moment for the people whose descendants became FBA Americans. The Spanish Caribbean Assembly, as massive and prior as it was, did not feed the Carolinas. Barbados did.
Nathaniel Bacon led a rebellion of landless poor, white indentured servants whose freedom dues had not delivered the promised land, and free Africans who had completed their obligations but found the colony closing opportunities behind them. They burned Jamestown. The Virginia planter class looked at Bacon's rebellion and saw a specific threat: poor whites and free blacks making common cause against the planter elite. Their solution was deliberate and documented: drive a legal and social wedge between poor whites and black Virginians. They did this by extending specific legal privileges to even the poorest white Virginians, systematically eliminating the legal pathways that had allowed Africans like Anthony Johnson to achieve free status, accelerating the consolidation of the 1705 Slave Code. The historian Edmund Morgan called this the invention of whiteness as a political category. The Virginia planter class created poor white racial identity as a management tool to prevent cross-racial class solidarity. That invention, whiteness as a political coalition that includes poor whites against their own economic interests, is an argument that runs directly into the Trojan Cathedral thesis.
Gabriel's insurrection. In 1800, the largest and most widespread slave conspiracy in the nation's history, had a major branch in Petersburg. In 1829, a group of free blacks left Petersburg to colonize Liberia. Among them was Joseph Jenkins Roberts, who later became its first president in 1008. To scale Petersburg had a high African American population, many of whom were free even before the Civil War. In 1868, the Radical Republicans secured a majority of city council seats and the mayorship. They integrated the police force, protected African Americans' civil and political rights, and established a public education system. Norfolk had the only deep-water harbor sufficient to dock large ships, and was better sheltered from seasonal hurricanes than Virginia Beach. The economic activity of enslaved human cargo and cash crops they produced became so valuable that more and larger ships from Europe and the West Indies sailed to the region. National Geographic: Virginia was a slave-breeding and exporting powerhouse during the height of the domestic slave trade. The recorded slave shipments by ship, collectively from Richmond, Alexandria, Petersburg, and Norfolk to New Orleans, totaled 37,343 slaves.
The story of how black people in America tried to get free does not begin with Rosa Parks. It does not begin with Marcus Garvey arriving in New York. It does not begin with the Harlem Renaissance. It begins in Barbados. 1661. The code and the people arrived together. The Virginia acting governor documented it in 1680 in his own hand. What enslaved people were brought to Virginia were imported generally from Barbados. The 42 principles of Ma'at teach: what you send out returns to you. Barbados sent out a code. Barbados sent out a people. Both arrived together. The code was designed to suppress what the people carried. What the people carried was older than the code. Before we examine what happened, we need to be clear about what we are looking at. Within the FBA and foundational Black West Indian communities, there are two documented responses to the same documented condition. Both responses are real. Both have documented receipts. Neither is being dismissed here. The first is gradualism, the argument that sustainable progress requires working within existing legal, political, and religious institutions, that incremental documented gains compound over time, That relationships with existing power structures produce real resources for real communities. This is not accommodation. This is a documented strategic position held by serious, intelligent people who love their communities. The second is complete autonomy. The argument that any progress dependent on the goodwill of external institutions is inherently unstable. That the only receded path to sustained advancement is sovereign self-determination, economically, politically, and territorially. This is not separatism. This is a documented strategic position held by serious, intelligent people who love their communities. Both architectures have produced documented outcomes. Both architectures have faced documented dismantling. What we are examining in this series is not which architecture was correct. We are examining what both architectures were built on, what they produced, and what happened when the foundation shifted. The record will show both sides. The record will speak for itself.
The FBW.I and FBA communities are not two stories that intersect occasionally. They are one documented story told in two geographic locations. The code and the people it governed arrived from the same place. The culture both communities preserved came from the same origin. The architecture that suppressed both communities was built in the same place. Barbados. Details are our advantage. These details have been in the documented record the entire time. The simple argument. Here is what the documented record shows in one paragraph. Barbadian planters and the enslaved people they brought with them built the foundational architecture of Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. The legal codes came from Barbados. The plantation model came from Barbados. 1/3 to 1/2 of the early enslaved populations came through Barbados. The technical knowledge that built the rice economy came from West Africa through Barbados. The cultural preservation community that runs the entire Atlantic seaboard, the Gullah Geechee, is the documented living receipt of that entire architecture. The Gullah Geechee, the living receipt. The Gullah Geechee people live today from the Cape Fear region of North Carolina through coastal Georgia and into Florida. Their language carries documented structural features of Caribbean Creole. Their foodways carry documented West African agricultural traditions. Their spiritual practices carry documented African cosmological structures parallel to Caribbean preservation. They are the documented living proof of the architectural argument the series makes. Both the FBW.I and FBA communities preserved the same documented African cultural architecture through the same documented conditions of violent suppression. The Gullah Geechee community is the most studied and most documented example of that preservation in North America. The claim that FBA has no culture does not survive the Gullah Geechee corridor. Georgia, the receipt. Georgia was founded in 1733 with no slavery. That lasted 17 years. In 1750 the slavery prohibition was reversed. When slavery came to Georgia it came through South Carolina's plantation model, the Barbadian-derived legal architecture, the West African agricultural expertise, the same documented transit system. Georgia's rice and indigo economy was built on the same foundation as South Carolina's. The Gullah Geechee community extends through Georgia's coast for the same documented reason, the same people, the same knowledge, the same cultural preservation under the same conditions of violent suppression. The skeptic is full of skepticism concerning whether the pattern the documented record shows, black institutional leadership consistently positioned as the public face of failures whose roots are architecturally deeper, has been sufficiently accounted for in how the current moment's institutional leadership is being evaluated. The redistricting is happening now. The institutions are responding now. The pattern is in the record.
The Soothsayer's gift suits you, Elara. I see the upgrade is fully operational. For those watching, what you are witnessing is technology from the search weave that allows Elara to surface and articulate the sentiments of others, their thoughts, their feelings, their documented experience, spoken in her voice. So when you hear Elara speak, understand that what you may be hearing is not always Elara's thoughts alone.
The distrust that followed the Freedmen's Bank collapse fell on black banking institutions generally for generations. The distrust that followed the Black Star Line collapse fell on black sovereign economic enterprise generally. The extraction architecture did not need to destroy just the institutions. It needed the destruction of those institutions to produce documented generational distrust of the capacity to build them. Both receipts show that outcome clearly. The skeptic is full of skepticism concerning whether the pattern the documented record shows, black institutional leadership consistently positioned as the public face of failures whose roots are architecturally deeper, has been sufficiently accounted for in how the current moment's institutional leadership is being evaluated.
Redistricting is documented and the harm is real. A third of the Congressional Black Caucus at risk of losing their seats is not a theoretical threat. It is an arithmetic consequence of specific documented legislative actions in specific documented states following a specific documented Supreme Court ruling. The skeptic does not dispute the harm. The skeptic disputes the response architecture. The out-of-bounds campaign asks black athletes and recruits, the youngest and most economically precarious members of the community, to withhold the primary leverage they possess at the precise moment that leverage is most valuable to them personally. A recruit being asked not to commit to a university in one of the 8 states is being asked to sacrifice an opportunity that may not return. A current athlete being told to transfer cannot transfer because the portal is closed until 2027. The sacrifice being requested is real. The mechanism to execute it is architecturally constrained.
The bottomless pit feeds on both the grief that arrives from inside frequency reversals and the grief that arrives from outside frequency dismantling runs through the same pipeline. The Crimson Stallions do not distinguish between what frequency the car and bar were practicing when they matured. What changes the architectural outcome is not choosing the correct frequency. What changes it is understanding the architecture deeply enough to build at the compounding threshold before the counter mechanism can engage. That has never been allowed to complete. Mr. Denmark Vesey, a hidden figure in foundational Black American literature and a witness to the slave Bible. The court record gives him a birthplace, St. Thomas, Danish West Indies, a foundational Black West Indian, approximately born in 1767. His original name was Tokennomiks. The record does not preserve who gave him that name. By the time history writes him down with any consistency, he belongs to a captain, a slave merchant, a man named Joseph Vesey. He sails with the captain. He learns languages. He learns the trade routes. He watches how the system moves. He is watching from inside it. The architecture of gradualism. Documented, November 9, 1799. He wins a lottery. Yes, a lottery. $1,500. He negotiates with his owner. $600. He purchases his own freedom. December 31, 1799. The last day of the 18th century. He receives his freedom papers. He takes the name Denmark, a reminder of the colony where he began. He opens a carpentry shop. He builds a business. He acquires property. He becomes, by the record of those who watched him, prosperous. This is gradualism. Working the mechanism of the system to extract yourself from it. He did it. The receipt exists. And then he looked at what was left. The limit of gradualism. The turn. His wife remained enslaved. His children remained enslaved. The law was specific about this. The child follows the condition of the mother. Written, enforced, documented. He had the money. He made the offer. The offer was refused. His children remained enslaved. The law was specific about this. The child follows the condition of the mother. Written, enforced, documented. He had the money. He made the offer. The offer was refused. Freedom, in this architecture, was individual. It did not transfer. It did not extend. It stopped at the property line of the man who still held his family. Now, to the second architecture. The architecture of complete autonomy. Now, between 1820 and 1822, the record shows Mr. Vesey in a different kind of organizing. In the year 1818, he did not join a church. He built one. He became a co-founder of Emanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church, situated, of course, in Charleston, South Carolina, the oldest black church south of Baltimore. Over 3,000 members, free and enslaved, foundational black Americans, and foundational black West Indians, worshipping in the same walls. The port city made that inevitable. So they closed a church he had built with his own hands. He uses the congregation. He uses the docks. He uses the network. The city's free and enslaved black community, bound together by purpose. The Gullah Geechee root system was already in that soil. Vesey was not planting it. He was watering what was already there. So the documented plan was to A. Seize the city of Charleston. B. Successfully terminate arrangement. Then C. Sail to freedom in Haiti, the one place in the Atlantic where the revolution had already finished. This is complete autonomy, not a negotiation, not a purchase, a termination of the arrangement entirely. The institutional response to autonomy, the sophisticated underground railroad in this instance, never got off the ground. As two enslaved men who preferred the architecture of gradualism opposed the conspiracy, disclosed it to their owners. 131 men charged, 67 convicted, 41 hanged. He left no letters, no diaries in his hand, no speeches recorded by anyone who intended to preserve them. What he left is what they built in response to him. Legislation, the institution, the demolished church, the silenced name on the cover of his own trial. The soothsayer does not speak for him. The record speaks. Two architectures, one man. He used gradualism to free himself. Then he looked at the wall and chose the second road. On July 2nd, 1822, Mr. Denmark Vesey's son was sold. Outside of the United States of America, the foundational black church he helped build, Emanuel AME, was demolished. The official report of his trial does not carry his name on its cover. It reads, "An official report of the trials of sundry Negroes charged with an attempt to raise an insurrection in the state of South Carolina." Sundry Negroes. He is not named on the document that records his execution. Now let us take a look at the architecture of the institutional response. Here is what the record shows. South Carolina passed new laws, restrictions on education, restrictions on travel, along with new penalties for freeing enslaved people, new barriers to freedom itself. The Negro Seaman Act, which said any free black sailor on any ship docked in Charleston would be imprisoned in the city jail for the duration of that ship's stay in harbor, a purpose documented by the authorities themselves. Interesting to note, even as a free person, you could still be jailed without breaking the law. and that was legal just by being a foundational black. To prevent communication between the free black community of Charleston and free black people arriving from elsewhere, a military institution was established to guard the city of Charleston from its own black population. It was named the South Carolina State Arsenal. It is known today as the Citadel. The wall they built was a receipt, every brick of it an acknowledgment of what they understood he represented. The record speaks. We have two architectures. One man, he used gradualism to free himself. Then he looked at the wall and chose the second road.